panel discussion on enhancing citizen services. I'd like to invite our session chair, Mr. Ravi Saxena, to kindly join us. I'd also like to invite our eminent panelists for this session, Mr. Vipin Tyagi, Director C. Government of India, Mr. Aman Nagar, National Head Government Vertical Personal Systems Group HP India, Mr. Anish Dhawan, Regional Manager VMware, Mr. Altaf Haldi, MD Kaspersky, Ms. Monali Handa, Director Sales and Computing, Mr. BK Panda, Additional Central PF Commissioner Employees Provident Fund Organization, and Mr. Sameer Chaudhary, General Manager IT from Power Grid Corporation of India Limited. We are going to have this panel discussion for approximately 30 minutes, and we request our panelists to stick to their time. Ladies and gentlemen, with these words, I'd like to request our session chair, Mr. Saxena, to kindly take over.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a challenge to sustain the interest and patience of the audience in the last session, and particularly when it's late by almost 50 minutes. So, it is the task of this panel to ensure that we finish as quickly as we can, so that I guess some dinner is laid out and people get it at due time. The topic for discussion today is enhancing delivery of services. I would just make a few points about it right in the beginning to set the ground. Why do we need to think about enhancing delivery of services? Is because services have been getting delivered over last hundreds of years, and today, if there is such a consciousness for enhancing it, it's just because A, it has become feasible because of technology, and B, the aspirations of people have increased, and there is an imperative need to fulfill those aspirations. The chief guest today, Mr. R.C. Mishra, mentioned about the digital divide. I strongly believe that ICT revolution, as a matter of fact, is going to cause a much larger divide than what the Industrial Revolution did 100 years ago. Industrial Revolution swept the power to produce in a few hands, and therefore the capital, it flew in a few hands. So there were the people who had the capital, and there were the people who did not have the capital, and that gave birth to the communism, the capitalism. And we see hundreds of years down, more than 100 years down the line, that the impact of that is still being felt. ICT revolution, which is giving the power of information in few hands and keeping a large cross-section of population bereft of that power, is going to create a larger divide. And therefore, the question of enhancing service delivery is intricately connected with the question of digital inclusion. And I think the panel could comment on this, whether they agree that digital inclusion would be a prerequisite for enhancing the service delivery. And coming from there, we need to think as to what are the essentials for creating digital inclusion. As of today, the situation is that we have more than 900 million mobiles in the country. We have about 40 million internet connections, with and 5 persons using each connection. We can take it that not more than 200-300 billion people are connected with the net. Services which are getting delivered through the net can be shared only by about 2 crore people of this country. There is, on the other hand, an increasing, Mr. Ravi Shankar actually mentioned that bandwidth is GDP, that each 10% increase in connectivity would lead to more than 1.3% increase in the GDP of the country, which also talks about a direct connection between poverty and digital inclusion. So digital inclusion is what is the challenge. For carrying out digital inclusion, for bringing in effect digital inclusion, we need to understand the scenario. The scenario today is that 60%, more than 60% population lives in the rural areas. Rural areas, until National Optical Fiber Plan comes into effect, is largely disconnected. I come from a state where fortunately that is not the case, which is simply because the aspirations of people have compelled the government to think in terms of creating a connected Gujarat. We thought of creating a broadband connection for each village, and when we looked around for the footprints of the service providers, we figured out that out of 18,000 villages, not more than 8,000 villages had this connectivity. So we created a VSAT network, took the bandwidth from the service provider, pumped it to the satellite, and got the 18,000 villages connected on a broadband which is called eGram. We have a wide area network which connects all the districts and the talukas, but it's not only that, it is 5,000 offices across the state and almost 40,000 nodes which exist on this wide area network. Yesterday only there was a review going on in the Department of IT on the effectiveness of the e-governance in various states. And we figured out 2.2 crore transactions take place electronically in Gujarat as against other states which are still counting in just a few lakhs. So we have been able to reach somewhere, but having reached somewhere, the feeling, the acute feeling, the acuteness of this fact that there is such a long way yet to go becomes even more important. What you need basically to brood upon is, as I like to say, the DNA of transformation, the devices, the networks, and the applications, which I like to call DNA, and that the devices, networks, and applications have to evolve in a manner that they become accessible to the common man. The size of the situation, the proportion of the situation is that today you have just about 3% penetration of internet in this country, as against more than 60-70% in most of the developed world. You have a large cross-section of poor people who get no services whatsoever, much less electronic services. In India, there is this syndrome of urban poverty. People migrate over to the urban areas, live on the platforms, live on the platforms and the footpaths, and we have no way to figure out how to connect those. So, given this kind of a situation, how do we how do we empower these people? How do we deliver services electronically to the entire cross section of population as the challenge? And I think we initiate this discussion now on some of these issues and see how we come to a conclusion as a result of this. Since we have to finish in another 20 minutes maybe, I'll request very quick reactions. First from Mr. B.K. Panda. Mr. B.K. Panda is Additional Central Provident Fund Commissioner of the Employees Provident Fund Organization based out of Delhi. Mr. Panda, your comments on this?
Respected Chairman of this session, I am looking after the IT division. I am heading the EPFO IT division for the whole country. And EPFO, as far as the corporate world, as you know, all are associated with EPFO and all are scared of EPFO office earlier. And today, for last, say, so many years, we are trying to give the service. Earlier, it was a inspector-oriented kind of thing, mentality. The change management was a very difficult task to bring in the organization. And we have tried last 2-3 years how to provide these services. First, we gave this small service for months together. The claim settlement, the people used to transfer from one company to another, one place to another. They were changing and settling the claims instead of transferring their account, because the transfer of account is a very tedious process in the present system. And so we wanted to give small services like showing the PF balances in the website. So we want you today, if you want to know your PF balance, you can just put your PF number and give your mobile number. SMS comes to, we have used the mobile governance coupled with the IT initiatives in the department, in the EPFO. So you get the PF balance in your mobile. And if you have submitted your claim forms, and you can see all the status of your claim forms in the website. What is the status, whether it is approved, rejected, or it is under process. And we have used the National Electronic Fund Transfer System, that is NEFT, so that if you give, along with your claim form, a copy of your checkbook or cross-check check or your account, that IFSC code, then the money is transferred to your bank account instantly within say 12 hours or less than that. Earlier we used to send through the envelopes. The checks used to be signed, the checks used to be put into the envelope, and it used to be sent to the person. So it used to take say 15-20 days even after the settlement of the claims. Now it takes say 12 to 13 hours or even less than that. So, but the penetration of this information has not reached the people much. That's why the percentage of this NEFT payment, though we have taken this initiative for last 1 year, the percentage is only 60%. It is not improving more it is not coming up to 100% because the people are not knowing that this facility is available in EPFO. And recently from 1st of April, we have started one electronic, that online submission of your challan and returns. The companies were having around 6 lakh employers in the country, 6 to 6.5 lakh employers in the country. They were submitting the returns separately and paying the subscriptions of the PF separately. From 1st of April, we have started that both, they have to upload the returns online. They are not required to prepare so many 5 to 6 types of return forms in paper return forms and come to EPF office and make to stop all those things, to stop the footfalls in our EPF office. We started this online submission of your returns. The returns are submitted on the line. Then the challan is popped off according to the whatever the return is there. You can take a printout of the challan and go to any SBI bank. SBI is our sole EPF sole banker. You can go to any bank, SBI bank, and deposit your check, and you will get instantly. Suppose on the clearance of your check, you get the SMS. The employer gets this SMS, and while for doing this, the employer has to register, so that the employer gets all the instant informations and instructions or any circulars through email or the mobile numbers. And once that money is realized in the bank, instantly that amount for whom he has deducted for the subscription is accounted in his bank account. Earlier, we used to wait for the year end. At the end of the year, the employers, they used to give the details of the employees, and we call it a 3A form. Then only the account was updated. So for 4-5 years, the accounts of our subscribers are not updated. So people, whatever they were getting the PF balance in our website, it was 4 years old or 3 years old. It was not updated. But today, it is immediately uploaded, and the employer can download the bank, that annual account statement of his employees next day.
How many people are taking the advantage of this system?
This has started, well, yes, this we are having 6 crore, yeah. This service is for the 6 crore subscribers in the country. 6 crore, out of 6 crore, there are about 6.5 lakh, as I said, the employers, out of which last month, around 1 lakh 20,000 people employers have availed this facility. Then this month, we have made it mandatory. All the 6 lakh employers have to submit online and take this facility.
So this facility, all the employees have access to devices through which they can avail of this. So I would request the panelists to please focus on this area instead of describing the details of the systems put in place as to how the benefit is getting incurred. What are the impediments in enlarging the cross section, which is intended to be the target group to be benefited. We have Mr. Vinit Gupta, Director of CDOT. CDOT has been an organization very much a part of the history of the telecom revolution that India has seen through, and a huge degree of empowerment that has taken place in this country. And as a result, this is one case in point where how connectivity has directly led to growth in GDP. CDOT is one of the organizations which is a living proof of that. I'd request Vinit to talk about what are the issues which are there in the way of enhancing the services to common man.
Thank you, sir. It is my privilege to be here and really share with you. The whole thing is that we have to elevate our vision of inclusion of 400 to 500 million people who can't read and write in any language. Forget about English as a language, which is the language of the computerization. 2 years back, I was taken aback by the sheer intellect that these people hold. They are probably, some of those are more intelligent than us. Only thing, they don't know English, they don't know language, and that keeps them away. Consequently, I started a center for computing for digitally underprivileged. And why I'm calling it digitally underprivileged? Because I met Professor Abdul Kalam, our honorable president, past president. And he said, don't call them illiterate, because that's an insult to them. So I changed from illiterate to underprivileged. Today, the technology has reached a level where it can imitate human being. So rather than eyes, I can put a camera, and that can analyze anything that is written on a piece of paper. Today, television has become so pervasive, 450 million houses are having television. And what I did, I asked these 8 young engineers coming out of the National Institute of Technology in IIT, and they built something called DRAX. What it does is that all the information that's available on internet, on any website, can be accessed by anybody who has never seen a computer by simply showing a card, which can be printed locally. There are only 2 interfaces in that, 0 to 9 pad for printing a card, and a card in front of the camera. And the system was deployed in through the NGOs, because I thought that will be the right route, because they understand the psychology of the people. And the results are very, very pleasant. 3 lakh people visited a Krishi Mela where we were demonstrating it. And there was a crowd, one over the other. They wanted to know what government has done for us. So this is the power of IT that is totally unexploited. That's why I say, sir, your vision and the people here, we have to raise our bar to another level. There are 3 categories of the ICT. In fact, ICT is merging together. After the brain, the most fertile place in the world is networks. Why I'm not using internet? Because networks are beyond the internet. Internet stops at website and all of that. Networks are carrying video. They're doing operation remotely. Education, which is getting delivered. The video is going to be dominant player. So what we have done today, CDOT has a technology that will give every village guaranteed bandwidth of 1 gigabit. This technology has gone to 10 manufacturers. They are Indian manufacturers, so it's not going to be like before where we have only 3% participation coming from India. It will be manufactured by Indian hands, and it will get hopefully deployed in the Indian networks. And that is only the part of the process. So there will be participation of all strata of society into that. But more importantly, unless it opens up the doors for the entrepreneurs, who can come out of the business model which we have not heard of, who are willing to deploy the clouds, then, real vision of India will emerge. And that's the path that I will propose. And that's where we are today. Technology is no barrier. This room alone can solve all the problems that we have talked about. We have to put the vision, we have to put the action plan. Thank you, sir.
Wonderful, wonderful, Mr. Tyagi. Can we? I think, yeah, that deserves a good hand, a big hand. What he's talked about is how technology is not a barrier for meeting with the aspirations of people. We have Aman Nagar. He is country manager, government vertical, personal systems group of HP. Government vertical, I'm sure a lot of perceptions about government and the people. I'd like you to react on the issues which have been raised until now.
So first of all, thank you very much, sir, for giving me this opportunity. In fact, it's been a very humbling experience for me today, hearing all these senior and learned people like you talking about the ICT and the vision of increasing the scope of the social inclusion, the financial inclusion, and the infrastructure inclusion of Government of India plans and the other things that we just heard. I firmly believe and agree with all the gentlemen here that we as technology companies have a very great role to play in enhancing the delivery of the services that are available to the common man today. Because unless until technology plays an important role, we will not be able to achieve the growth at the rate which we want to achieve. We today are one of the most exploding economies across the world, but at the same time we are also plagued with a lot of inbuilt inefficiencies, a lot of legacies that we have carried for past so many years. But at the same time, we are also fortunate to be in an era where we have companies like my own company, Hewlett Packard, who has been involved, who has had success in most developed countries like United States, United Kingdom, and other parts of Europe.
I'll just interrupt you here to ask you one question. If the digital inclusion has to acquire the shape that the size of India and then the 3rd billion and the 4th billion require, do you foresee technology becoming cheaper, technology becoming affordable for being deployed for the masses that it is required?
Yeah, so it has been a trend. It has been in fact a trend. When I started my career about 20 years back, the cost of the ordinary PC, I'll just take an example from there and take it forward with how the technology has become more affordable. And the cost of the PC which is today available and the laptops which is available is drastically different. Similarly, the kind of other technological advances that we have made have only, with the spread of in geographies and the number of people, adopting it. Say, take the example of mobile phones. See, when the mobile phone started in somewhere around 1995, 96 kinds, the one phone call used to cost about 16 rupees for one particular call. Today it is less than 50 paisa. The mobile phones used to be as expensive as 20,000 rupees, minimum 1 lakh rupees, 75-80,000 rupees. So now they are so much affordable. So technology is becoming more affordable, and it is going to be.
Thank you. We have from now 2 security companies, Kaspersky, Altaf. One of the issues along with technology deployment is whether it is safe, whether it is going to retain privacy of the people, or is going to convert every human into a digital being. What role the security plays in making technology deployable smoothly and across such large cross section as is required for?
Thanks, sir. Definitely security is one of the most critical key. When you talk about all these kind of citizen charter initiatives that are happening, security becomes the most imperative thing, the most important thing, for one simple reason, because the people who are actually going to use it, if they are not able to ensure that whatever they are doing, at the back of the mind, if they think, like we have the best of citizen charter services available, but if I think that, okay, fine, it is not secure if I enter my data, or give my data, then the system will not work. So it is very important that that confidence should be given to the users and to the public at large, that these systems are very secure. Only then, will people will be more comfortable using these services and getting all this kind of
Exactly.
things done.
The biggest concern is about the payment gateways,
True.
the financial transactions, the safety of those, because most of the services would require financial transactions, and if it is possible to ensure the safety of those. So what are the steps that you think the security companies are taking to have an affordable and guaranteed way of providing the security when it is deployed to masses in millions?
So, as far as guarantee is concerned, to be very honest with you, if somebody tells that I can offer you 100% guarantee, from a security perspective, that person is lying. It's more of a sales gimmick. So yes, what can happen is that the security products and the security solutions, they can come close to reaching you that kind of maximum guarantee for of security. But ultimately, you as a user or the end user or the end consumer, he's the one who has to take certain steps, and certain best practices have to be followed. Have cryptic passwords. Use a dual factor authenticator when you are entering your information. Have some kind of PIN related aspects. In fact, now as you mentioned about online payment, a lot of companies are now offering digital certificates to make payments. They are offering dual factor authentication before you make any payment. So these are the initiatives that are being provided by security organizations.
Thank you. Now, another company we have is VMware, Anish Dhawan, a company which should actually, it's known more for virtualization than for all other things that they do. And virtualization is a way for making technology cheaper, affordable, and of course the way to cloud. So would you like to comment on that aspect when it comes to delivery of services?
Thank you, sir. I'm more as a citizen of the country right now than from VMware, and I would possibly put a few reactions to what everybody said as well. Nobody actually talked about the impediments, when it comes to enhancing the services. So Mr. Mishra actually outlined them pretty well, As a user, so I am not part of that 60%, so I really cannot reflect the thoughts of the 60% of rural India, because I've lived my life most of the times in cities. But for the balance 40%, what we have today is also fraught with a lot of problems. For example, I was booking a ticket some time back. So there is a time the site continuously keeps on going down, and I had to enter the data 5-6 times, just to book one ticket. There are many such services, which we feel are available, but actually speaking, the experience has not been the one that it should be, that takes me back to the site again. So one is that we have our own vision. The other is every organization, every country is struggling with similar problems of delivering the citizen services. The other is we learn from them for the mistakes they've made already. Typically, 3 factors which come into picture, when we are looking at enhancing citizen services are: one is the quality of service a person enjoys when he goes to a particular service delivery, and that is what takes him back. Second, which our friends from Kaspersky mentioned, is more related to risk and reputation, how secure is he, how risky is he, also depends on the confidence level that he's going to have. And the third one is obviously the cost pressures. Now, you will see worldwide, there are a lot of countries who've went ahead and taken the initiative of delivering citizen services, but now when the changes in policies have happened, they're really struggling with their systems, essentially because the thought process which went behind delivering the citizen services was first get the infrastructure in place and then think about applications. So the new thought which is coming now is first think about services, what applications will deliver these services, and then go down to what is the basic minimum infrastructure that is required to deliver these services. The another problem which goes with these services is the life cycle or the planning cycle in talking about these services are much beyond the technology cycle. So today, on average, while he talked about PC, you can have servers, you can have networks, but on average, while we still would like to assume that the life cycle of any technology component is 3 years, it's actually come down to 1 year. So any decision or planning which is going beyond 5 years, by the time that particular application or a service comes out, it is already obsolete day one. So our technology acquisition, right? Another thing is that the budgets keep on moving on. So our budgets life cycles, right, for these services to be delivered have to be lesser than the technology life cycle. That's one. Second very important point which you mentioned is the cost. So new models are evolving today. If you see, most of the government organizations are actually running small IT companies inside them now. For the infrastructure they've already acquired, for the applications they're already delivering, but the same thing can be delivered as a service. And that is what changes the cost model completely, because you've got no capex. It is an operating OPEX model, and that's where cloud computing comes into picture. So we've got stalwarts. I mean, I was amazed when I met people in National Informatics Center. I don't want to put the names, but the kind of skill they have was so amazing. So when we have such amazing people, right, we should use people within government departments on thinking creatively and innovatively on what service to be delivered, and not think about how to set up a server, how to set up a network. Offload it to them. They will work the OPEX model out for you. They will provide you infrastructure as a service. You work on the competency of your organization on delivering that service. And think about more innovative ways of getting closer to the citizen and doing that. So having said that, right, there are a lot of things which are required or re-engineered to be thought of leveraging this. And I am again going back to what Mr. Mishra said at that point, that if we continue to do the same way, digitize the same way that we're doing now, we're just creating more inefficiencies, and we're creating more time lags, right, in delivering that services. One of the other examples is we have a project of a service delivery. It goes for the project timelines, and project management is really chaotic, right? If you see the timelines, and the scope continuously keeps on changing. The reason is the technology life cycle is much shorter than the process that we put in place. So our bigger projects that we think about, right, we have few of them are successes already, and I think when I tell you what I'm saying, you will know. It should be modular. Think about if you've got 16 services to be delivered from one department, think which are the essential ones. Those are the ones, when you talk to the person who's developing the services for you, create a module of essential services first. That should be delivered in the first 18 months. And you should have a mechanism of enhancing the scope thereafter, and tertiary services keep on adding over and over that. That's what takes you from infrastructure perspective to look at cloud computing as a model, because that frees you of the entire thought process of how to set up the infrastructure. From application perspective, the new models which are coming, which is service-oriented architecture and object-oriented programming, right, is what makes you think only of services and very modular, lightweight applications which are agile, which can be moved from one system to the other. They're not locked to the systems. So that's where we as technology vendors would come. But the thought process and the direction would really come from people who are in a leadership position, and can make those changes.
That's very well said, Harish. Very important points you made of freeing the practitioners or delivery organizations from the hassles of infrastructure, being modular, and care for the obsolescence, change, business process re-engineering. Mr. Panda also talked about changed management. There is no doubt about the fact that if we really are interested in effective service delivery, the first thing, and as Mr. Mishra also said, that we need to address is our own way to think and decide. Unless the organization and its processes for decision support change intrinsically and inherently, there is no point digitizing, just digitizing what we have been doing through hands. So that's wonderful. That brings us to Mr. Santosh Subramaniam, who is Senior Manager Project of N-Computing. And please, like Anish, give your views on the effectiveness of the enhanced delivery process and kind of support your organization does for that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving the opportunity to share my thoughts. Well, enhancing citizenship is something which is very exciting, and in country like India, where we are addressing a population which is in millions, some of the key challenges are related to the reach, because we have to touch upon the people, those who are in remote locations. While we are addressing the challenges of reach, there are a couple of other things which also we need to understand, which is in terms of diversity of this country, which is in terms of culture, language and other things. The beauty of technology is that it touch upon all those challenges. While we are addressing those challenges, some of the other things which comes in front of us in terms of constraints are, of course, you rightly pointed out, are the cost and of course the affordability. The other aspects and the challenge would be the power availability, which is also one of the key factors. Companies like us, which is where we are addressing, we address both these things in terms of affordability and in terms of power consumptions. If you look at our solutions, which is now deployed across the country, and you would be very excited to know that today we are working very closely with the government sectors a lot. And that too in schools, government schools, where we are addressing really underprivileged children. And the reason why in states where we are working, we reached upon that much of volume was because of these two factors. One was, of course, the affordability, with which, with the limited constrained budgets, the government was able to take up to the masses, and second was the within the power availability and all. So those are the two areas which really have allowed us to take us to that level. So this is really exciting for us.
Thank you. We have Sabir Chaudhary, Head of the Information Technology Division of Power Grid Corporation of India. Yet another organization which is a very strong player in the management of the country's empowerment of the poor. Let's hear Sabir Chaudhary on the question of enhancement of delivery.
Thank you, sir. I am privileged to be here with the panel under the chairmanship of Honorable Chairperson. As a organization, Power Grid stands a little bit different than other service providers, in the sense that we are consumers of technology and also providers of technology. Power Grid role in the complete scenario of Indian power sector is this is a single transmission utility under central government for providing the national grid establishment and management of the national grid, which stands between the generators and the state grids. It is the super highway of the complete power backbone of the country. Normally when there is a power disruption, people are in doubt what happens, what is happening, who is at fault and all. We have seen in the last post-independence era that there has been a lot of enhancement of power generation capacity, mostly focused on the investment on the generation sector, but transmission and distribution sector has been not been stressed in the proportion of generation sector. Now, as far as citizen service is concerned, our chairperson has already pointed out that poverty and digital divide is the two main focus areas which is going to be coming in the forefront. Power Grid, I can give you a little bit of scenario how the power system is being addressed by the government's plan, and Power Grid is an active player and partner in that complete program. The central government has taken up a plan of Advanced Power Reform and Development Program, APDRP, which addresses the basically the weaker distribution systems of the state level, where Power Grid has been assigned for the complete management, starting from conception to implementation of the strengthening of the systems. Now this is being done in the whole country in 3 stages. The stage 1 is the complete infrastructure reinforcement at the distribution level, at the core electrical and distribution point of view. The next level is the RAPDRP program, where the complete vertical integration and automation is being attempted, which is also around 50,000 crores project, where Power Grid is involved as a third party audit agents. There are a lot of involvement of technology providers all around the organization, country. Now the third level is a completely radical shift from the classical approach. We are going for a smart grid approach. Government has taken a very organized and institutional arrangement with a Indian Smart Grid Task Force headed by Honorable Shampit. There are 5 working units on that, and Power Grid is...
It is great to see, Mr. Chaudhary, that there is a concern in the management of the power supply in the country to make sure that there is infrastructure developed on increasingly advancing technology to ensure that power does reach everywhere, every village, every person, every household. And actually that is one of the most important prerequisites for the technology to reach everywhere. So I think this panel has been deliberately constituted to give a balanced mix of people who have capacity to tackle the issues of the delivery of services. Only thing I'd like to say at the end, because the time has been a constraint, I'm sure the panelists had a lot more to say on the issues, that enhancing the delivery levels and to make those distributed across the entire population is not an option that is available with the government, whether to do it or not. That is not an option with the government. There is great deal of realization within the government that it has to be done. And the power of social media, the first thing is connectivity. Like Mr. Gupta said, they're looking at a technology which will make it extremely affordable to let bandwidth be reachable, to the granularity would be good enough to reach all villages, 6 lakh villages in the country. You have National Optical Fiber Plan, which indicates the resolve of the government to make sure that bandwidth reaches everywhere. And once the bandwidth reaches everywhere, you have Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. Santosh talked about computers. In Gujarat, we have distributed, there are 11 computers in more than 40,000 schools, primary schools each in every village. We run a transponder, a television service, like any other television service on KU band, for which we have a transponder of the satellite available with us. We run 16 channels of education. All the 45,000 schools receive streaming programs on 16 channels for different kind of subjects. We have these channels being used in villages across the entire state. We have eGram I talked to you about, where 13 Mbp pipe carries 35 pairs of video conferences with the villages. 14,000 villages, we have video conferencing with the villages. We have, as I told, 2.2 crore transactions. But the more you move in this direction, the more you know that the way forward is much longer and arduous and daunting. So we are actually in the business together, the technology experts, the CDOT, the Power Grid, and everybody else, the ESIS, in making this happening, making this possible. And this is something where it's only a question of whether the people's aspiration move faster or the government is able to catch up with that or not. You want to say something? So let Mr. Gupta maybe say a word about Mr. Tyagi.
Right, okay. I will be really brief as to what, in my view, need to be done. Connectivity is fundamental right of every citizen. Finland has already passed a bill they said that broadband is fundamental right of every citizen in Finland. There are 3 more countries which have moved in this direction. Now we have to really put a target on which date we will make broadband connectivity as fundamental right of our Indian citizen. Very, very tall order, but I think need to be done. Number 2 is that when we are buying technology in India, it's already obsolete because we are buying proven technology. And proven technology means obsolete technology. So the R&D for India, particularly focused on our problem, needs to be result oriented but need to be supported. So these are 2 things to answer. The technology cycle is smaller than the project cycle because technology that we are getting is obsolete. So how can you have obsolete technology which will last longer? But I can tell you, today in this country, we have technology that will last for another 5 years. 100G, 10G, and 1G. All programs are available. The problem is that we can't afford all that kind of luxury at this point in time. So we have to connect what we have. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you, sir, for providing that.
Thank you. I think with that we close the session.
Before wind up, we have a small question. Like this is a wonderful panel discussion. Like we have the vendor, we have the government, we have other organizations. I just want to understand, like since we have a topic like best practices in India going digital, I want to have a small question for a system integrator, big class system integrator. How they're working for enhancing citizenship for the digital connectivity. Can I have a question for Mindlens? Just you have to very short in, because we are going out of time.
Thank you very much. As a system integrators, the thing which I wanted to highlight out here is today we are getting all the requirements once it's all finalized. So the request is that use us as a consultant when the things are getting planned. I'll give you a small example. It won't take much time. This is about Bangalore Metro. Now, when the Bangalore Metro was getting done, the entire infrastructure, when it was coming up, what was happening was we looked at the pain points, and that's why I'm saying that we should be used as a consultant and understanding the pain points and come up with a solution. So in the Bangalore Metro, we actually, what they were deploying was something which is similar to Delhi Metro, which was already done. And we looked at, you all must have traveled in Delhi Metro during the peak hours. It's very difficult to get in. And we devised an innovative solution which was RFID based. Now, a person just carries a tag or carries a ticket and he just walks in. He doesn't have to show his token anywhere. He doesn't have to put that, or he doesn't even have to show his smart card. Thereby, completely removing the congestion which the citizens face. So that's all I have to say. Use us as a consultant much before everything is designed. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I think on behalf of all the panelists, I take the opportunity to thank VAR India for giving us this opportunity. And I hope, I wish VAR India and everybody present here success. All the best. Thank you. Jai Hind.